Video games, they're here. They're here. Get used to it. I'm sorry if I seem distracted here at the top of the show. It is August 23rd. This is the Jeff Gerstmann Show. It's a podcast about video games, but someone in the Twitch chat asked, is Titanfall the first game to I don't mean to single you out here. It says, was Titanfall the first person shooter with a grappling hook? No. In fact, is it three-wave CTF for Quake 1? I'm going to say that is before Titanfall and also probably the first one, among the first one. And that, speaking of which, they just added support for that CTF into the re-release of Quake, that new version of Quake that they put out on consoles and reissued on PC and all this other stuff. They were like, oh, by the way, we are putting three-wave into this with Zoid's blessing and all that other stuff, and that's kind of awesome. That's pretty awesome. Speaking as someone who fucking hates Capture the Flag, I'm like, that's pretty awesome that they're doing that, because that is such an iconic mode for that game. It is such a huge deal. It was then. It's still CTF was a popular mode, and it still is. And now we just need to get Action Quake, and we need to get Rocket Arena. We need to get some proper Rocket Arena in there if they haven't done that. But oh man, once Rocket Arena came out and then Rocket Arena 2 for Quake 2, like that's all I wanted to do. And then when Jailbreak came out for one of those Unreal Tournament games, whichever one it was. Right, yes. Does EA own the rights to the term Rocket Arena now in a way that is going to fuck up everything forever? That would be disgusting. Disgusting. Also, there are multiple people in the chat citing Electronic Arts Rocket Arena. I think this is the most anyone has talked about that game in one place at one time since before it was announced, when I was in a room playing Rocket Arena, shaking my head going, I can't believe they're calling a game Rocket Arena. I'm so mad. Also, this game is not great. But also, I'm so mad that they're naming this game Rocket Arena. How dare they? And then it went on to seemingly zero success. Because it just did, I don't know, that game seemed like okay at best, whatever. Anyway, let's not talk about Rocket Arena. What the fuck are we doing? All right. Hey, so today is the opening night. If you're in Germany, it's nighttime, I guess. I don't know how that works. It is the opening for Gamescom. So we're going to see a bunch of new announcements. We will see new footage of Sonic Frontiers, all this other stuff. It seems like Dead Island 2 has been leaking pretty hard lately, and that maybe that will end up being here. Embracer needs a hit. They sure as fuck didn't. Oh man, whoo. So yeah, there'll be a bunch of stuff. There will be a bunch of stuff at this announcement thing. And yeah, we will watch that. So, but if you're listening to this podcast later, I'm not gonna try and make you listen to the audio of that announcement thing. We'll do that as a separate stream that'll go up on YouTube, all that other stuff, and we'll do that. We're going to try to have a normal podcast bookending this announcement thing. So we'll come back from break, and then a bunch of things will have been announced, I guess, is probably how this is going to work. Why don't we take a very quick break here, and then we will come back, and I will yell at you about Saints Row for probably the next 40 minutes or so. How about that? Okay. Maintaining focus through an entire day sometimes can be a little bit tricky. I know people get into their morning coffee or energy drink or, energy drink or perhaps an energy drink. But that later in the day, kind of just that post-lunch just loafy, slumpy kind of feeling that sets in. That says, hey, you got to do this for like 3 or 4 more hours, but you do not have the energy to power through it. Blah. Sometimes, people reach for another cup of coffee or something else that's, can be a little bit, I don't know, overkill. So sometimes there's a need for like a cleaner energy boost, just something that's going to be, it's a little something. Not going to be crazy, not going to keep you up late at night, all that other stuff, just to keep a little bit of focus. That's why there's Focus Melts from Feels. Feels brand new Focus Melts are unlike anything you might already be into to try to focus. Focus Melts are a fast-acting, long-lasting, and caffeine-free tablet to help you say goodbye to procrastination and reclaim your day. These things dissolve in moments. You slap them on your tongue, under your tongue, whatever you're into. And they'll leave you with improved focus within minutes. It tastes nice, and they can help reduce cravings for snacks. A little bit of a appetite suppressor there, also, which is a nice kind of late afternoon sort of thing. So if you need a boost of focus, instead of reaching for that second or third drink, pop a tablet. Focus Melts are powered by tetracitrine, a naturally occurring compound that gives you the laser focus you can expect from caffeine and other stimulants, but without all that crash and all that disaster. Feels has already helped more than 100,000 people take back control and feel better through their premium products, real human support, and their membership program with free delivery straight to your home. And now there's these Focus Melts on top of all that other stuff to help you say no to sluggish days and restless nights. That's right, Feels Focus Melts. Become a member today and save 50% off your first order of Focus Melts and get free shipping by going to feels.com/Jeff and using the code Jeff at checkout. As a member, you'll save money on every order, and you can easily pause, swap, or cancel at any time. That's FEALS.com/Jeff and use Jeff to become a member today. Say goodbye to procrastination, reclaim your day, and start feeling better with Feels. Okay. Saints Row is out today. It's out this morning. This is the reboot of Saints Row. They are rebooting Saints Row. They have rebooted Saints Row. This is something that had to happen. When you think about Saints Row the Third and Saints Row 4, where those games took the open world kind of crime game formula, by the end of 4, you can basically fly. It became a lot more like Crackdown than a Grand Theft Auto style game. That's where the series roots are. Saints Row 1 came out at a time when GTA hadn't made the move to the new platforms, and so it was like, early enough in the Xbox 360 run that you were like, oh, I'm psyched to play a game like this on this generation of consoles, even if it is fairly standard. They did have some ideas. It had online multiplayer, which was novel at the time. People really like Saints Row 2. I don't truck with Saints Row 2. It just it rubbed me the wrong way immediately. Like in the first half hour of that game, I was like, I don't want to play this anymore. And some of that's probably a timing thing, but Saints Row the Third is it was such an amazing game that happened at exactly the right time. The writing, it was a very funny game, of just a very silly game, very over the top, and I thought it was an incredible video game, probably the best video game that came out that year. And Saints Row 4 did more of the same, but they got to a point where you're like, okay, we can't, they have to pull it back. It's gotten so over the top, it's so out there. By the end of Saints Row 4, you're like rewriting history and all this other stuff. And so you kind of have to do something different. This Saints Row reboot is different than Saints Row 3 and 4 were, but it is at best one of the most standard, kind of templated, formulaic, open world crime games I've played in ages. They don't make games like this anymore. And so perhaps this is a point in its favor if you're a person who's just like, I need some more GTA style mission design, but I don't want to play GTA because, what else, there's not really that much else out there. So a lot of the mission design is incredibly plain. A lot of it is very much, okay, get in this car, drive over here, shoot these people. Congratulations. Drive this car back to this place and don't let the car blow up. The sorts of missions you kind of come to expect from these sorts of games. And I found it to be pretty boring out of the gate. The game opens, so they're setting the game around a handful of roommates, and so you have 4 roommates, and it turns out that like all of the roommates are technically, or 2 of the roommates are working for 2 of the different gangs in the city. And so you've got this interesting dynamic of, they're roommates, they're cooking food, they're doing stuff roommates do, they're hanging out on the couch, that it's a very different vibe than what they've been going for, that I think has a lot of potential, like out of the gate. Because this is before the Saints have started as a gang. This is an origin story for this kind of new rebooted version of the Saints. And so at the start of the game, you're basically like working for a PMC, and you've got other characters that are working for the other gangs in the city and all of this other stuff. And it's a fun little dynamic. And they kind of don't do that much with it. I don't know. The storyline, it very quickly just becomes like, oh, we're going to start a gang. We'll start our own gang. We'll show them. And then you go to war with the other gang, and you go to war with the cops and the PMC and all this other stuff, and start taking on the world. And, that kind of like roommate dynamic, that kind of dialogue kind of comes up here and there, where they are kind of like, they're close friends, and they have in jokes, but they don't let you in on the in jokes. It's like references to just like, remember the ghost pepper night? And they're like, oh, we don't talk about that, blah. And it's, you feel like you're on the outside of this relationship, and it ends up just feeling kind of forced and fake and window dressing for the rest of the game. And it's a shame, because I think that as a means to figure out a way why they're starting their own gang and why they're taking over the city, it's actually like a pretty funny premise of just like, I don't know, we were just roommates, like we were struggling to make rent, and now we are suddenly the biggest gang in town. Like there's a lot of potential there that I think they just drop the ball on as the game progresses. And so I guess I should say I have not finished the story. I'm about 20 hours in. It just feels aimless. It just feels very directionless. And I think that's probably going to be the major kind of lingering, ongoing problem with Saints Row, is that even when it's at its best, it's just okay. When we get to the gameplay stuff, the weapons don't feel good. The assault rifle, like, just doesn't hit the way it should. The SMGs spray all over the place, but don't work well up close in some situations. Like, it feels like sometimes there's a guy standing right in front of you and you are pulling out the gun that will auto lock on and snap to a target, at least for a moment, and then you pull the trigger and it doesn't do any damage, and you're like, I guess all these shots are missing. I don't know. And it's very confusing, because now that I'm 20 hours in, you get the ability to buy upgraded guns at levels 5, 10, and 15. I'm now level 16. It seems like the level cap is 20. From looking at the menus and stuff. I can't say that with certainty, but the upgrades seem to stop at level 20. And so going in and buying the upgraded weapons, like, it doesn't feel like you're unlocking additional weapons where you're like, oh, cool, this works better now, or oh, awesome, this is like a more powerful, crazy thing. It's just like, oh, I unlocked an old-timey gun that I guess will kill in one hit but takes forever to reload. Like, the trade-offs on all the weapons feel bad. Like, none of that stuff, you do not, like, think about other Saints Row games as in very, like, very plain ways as pure power fantasy. In some cases, some of the purest power fantasy that this genre has ever seen. This feels like the opposite of that, where, like, I'm still using the starter pistol. And honestly, I am using the pistol over the SMG and the rifle because it seems to just do more damage on headshots than some of the supposed more powerful weapons. And it's just the actual shooting and all of that stuff just feels bad. That aspect of the game feels almost broken in a sense, where you're just like as I'm shooting, emptying magazines in the directions of enemies and it's barely doing any damage. I'm like, well, I don't know why I would ever use anything other than the pistol, because the pistol shots land rather than holding down. There's a 3-shot burst assault rifle. Maybe because it's not full auto, that would work better. It's crazy. Also, furthering that, a lot of enemies are really bad bullet sponges. They will have life meters over their head, so you can see exactly how much damage you're doing and all that sort of stuff. Some enemies will have an armor layer on them at first, too, that you have to knock down. And there are cases where you just feel like I'm, like, landing shots, but I am having to empty fucking rounds into every single one of these guys. Like, into their head. Where, like, the pistol might do it in 2 shots, the SMG does it in half a magazine. And it just doesn't feel good to fire guns in that game, which is one of the biggest things you do in that game. Shooting. Sniper rifle, yeah, headshot, kill him, done. If you want to deal with the sniper rifles. The shotguns can be powerful at times, but also seemingly not as powerful as you want them to be. Again, for a game where, now that I'm 20 hours in and I feel like I'm kind of seeing the end in sight a little bit, I feel like I'm at a turning point here where I've gone through the side missions that get you the weird weapons, and, like, you get like a hoverboard and an explosive football. Like, you get some stuff there, and none of the combat feels engaging or exciting. They give you a takedown, and this takedown is governed by a meter. It seems like you can only have one at a time. I have not seen an ability to unlock more than one of them, but basically, if you run up to an enemy and hit the Y button, as long as they're unarmored, so you have to shoot the armor off them first, it will go through a too long and often repetitive takedown animation, and you will get some health back. And so that becomes a key part in kind of protracted battles. You want to get your health back. And so you find yourself going like, oh, I need to run up to an enemy right now and hit the takedown button to get some health back. It devotes, like, the bottom center of the screen has this takedown icon in it, kind of at all times when you're fighting. When it doesn't have the Saints logo in it, it is a percentage counting up. And it's just there all the time. It's just too much. It just doesn't need to be like that. The UI could be better there, but at the same time, like, that takedown doesn't feel, it just, like, that aspect of the game feels weird and doesn't recover nearly as much health as it should for, like, how infrequently it charges. Like, you have abilities to, like, when you're getting kills, it will start to fill it up and stuff like that. But you also have a separate meter called flow, and you will have pips on that meter. I think by the end of the game, by the time you're done leveling up, I think you can have 5 different pips on it. And a super will do either, one of your moves will take either 1 or 2 pips off of that meter. And you can configure that like a loadout. As you level up, you will unlock different moves for that. And that'll be stuff like, hey, it's a hand grenade. You can throw a hand grenade. Or you can throw a mine out, and the mine will stick to an enemy, which is funny because you can stick the mine on someone's face and then it blows up. But it barely does any damage. You'll have a cluster of like 5 enemies. It does not kill all 5, and they're standing very close together. I feel like in some cases, it doesn't even kill the one that it fucking stuck to. the weapons feel so grossly underpowered that even when you get a flaming kind of Superman punch and you use that to punch through someone who's doing some stick twirly bullshit to knock them down, like, it doesn't even fucking do any damage. You know, it's just like you knock them down. You're like, oh, I guess I have to shoot them now. And then they're laying down and you're shooting them. And the meter is not even fucking moving. You're like, what am I doing? This is all in default settings. It has actually a lot of different things that you can adjust. Saints Row has a ton of custom difficulty options where you can adjust like 5 or 6 different things. I don't remember the exact number, but like, you know, it has kind of the standard kind of easy, normal, hard, whatever. But then you can customize each individual item to your liking as well. This is just on normal. And so the weapons, all of that combat feels awful. And I'm not having a terrible time with it because I just haven't played a game like this in a really long time. Like, there are aspects of this game that I'm like, oh, you know, if they do this, this will be an absolutely acceptable video game. But I do not see a scenario where this becomes a good or great video game. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. Obviously, this is stuff that's like balanced, whatever, you know, maybe they like the way this is balanced and they'll never touch this aspect of the game ever. But the stuff that they probably will address is how glitchy it is. I'm going to say, and so I checked this morning because it actually came out this morning. I've been playing the game over the weekend and stuff like that. And so you're always wondering when you play a game pre-release, is this the same build, especially on PC? On console, it's a little more locked down and you can kind of have a better sense. But I've been playing the PC version of the game. And so you're always wondering, is this the same version that's going to launch on Tuesday morning? And I'm like, I don't know. I hope not. But it was the same version number. I went and installed the retail version out of the Epic Store to check and see how that stuff goes. And it's the exact same build number, my save carried over, all that other stuff. So I feel more comfortable talking specifically about the number of bugs I have seen, because it doesn't seem like, you know, it seems like that's the version people are buying and playing today. I have had, I'm going to say 7 to 10 instances of scripting. Like, missions just stop. Missions just don't proceed to the next thing. Where, like, you know, you're running up a train, and on every time you're on a new train car, there's more combat there. And in this instance, the door opens and there's a helicopter there. It's an open kind of flatbed car. And you're like, oh shit, I need to blow up this helicopter now. Cool. That's cool. It's fine. It's fun to finally be using this rocket launcher to blow up helicopters, that's why I'm here. The helicopter didn't activate. And so it just sat there. There was voice dialogue about like, oh shit, a helicopter. But it just sat there. There's a guy in the helicopter. The helicopter is invincible. And so I just ran past it, and there's a tank on the other side of it, and you're supposed to like get in the tank and blow up a bunch of stuff as you get to the next door. But because I couldn't blow up that helicopter, the door never opened. And so I'm just like stuck on this. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess some scripting thing broke and this enemy didn't activate, and now I can't blow them up, and now I can't proceed. So I guess I'll just jump off the train and die and restart at a checkpoint and do it again. And I've had to do that. I've had to like restart at checkpoint, like I said, somewhere between 7 and 10 times over my 20 hours with the game. The catch, though, is that when I jumped off the side of the train, it went to reload the checkpoint and then didn't reload. And it just sat there at the loading screen. And I had to manually quit, like force quit the game, reload. And then it was like, hey, now why don't you do this entire mission all over again from the start? I'm like, no, not tonight. I am done for the night. I had another situation where I'm, you know, like you're burning some records before the cops can get them. And then it's like, hey, all right, you burned all the records and now these helicopters are coming to get you. You should get in the turret of this APC and shoot them down. And you're like, okay. The helicopters never spawned. And so I'm just like sitting there just going like, oh, okay, I guess I'm just stuck here. Enemies sometimes just won't activate. That's not a game breaking bug, but a lot of cases of like running around a corner and just like enemies just standing there, not active, staring right at me, not active. I start shooting them, they do not activate. I'm at least able to kill them in most cases, but just enemies just not turning on and trying to attack, which is welcome because the combat in that game is not satisfying enough to make me want to fully engage with it. And so the idea of just like, oh, here's some easy kills, maybe I can get through this part faster, like great. That's a positive in a sick way. And so like those aspects of the game, those will probably be the things they fix, right? Those will probably be the things that get addressed as they work to patch the game. And hopefully they will fix all of that stuff. But I think what I'm saying is they can polish all of that stuff up, and they should have. Before, this game should not have shipped in this state. I don't want to point fingers in any specific situation. I don't know how this game went behind the scenes, who asked for what, delayed, but like point blank, this game should not ship in this state. It should have been cleaned up. And if it had been, we would barely be talking about it. You'd go like, oh, how's the new Saints Row? That's fine. It's okay. I don't know. Like it's a little dull. It's pretty routine. It's another one of those. It's fine. And that would be that. You'd be like, oh, that's a bummer. I wish that they could have done more with Saints Row to differentiate it. I wish they would have found a better game in there instead of just shipping a really standard kind of open world crime game, and people would have moved on, and it would have just been like, oh, okay, that's a bummer. Anyway, what's out next week? Instead, by also shipping it in this insanely broken state, maybe that's a little harsh, like way rougher than a shipping game should be in this day and age. Especially a single, it's got co-op. I have not seen the co-op, but like a mission-based, like a game that this studio has made multiple times before, all of that sort of stuff. You just look at it and go like, gosh, like it's not even broken in an interesting way. And now it's become the topic of conversation. Like, wow, I can't believe how fucked up this game was when it shipped. Like, wow, like I can't believe. I mean, maybe I can believe, but think about it this way. We just had earnings calls and another round of purchases and stuff like that. Like Embracer is trying to establish itself as a player. They want to be like, no, we're out here making moves. We own all these studios. We're making big games. We're making big moves. Like just like last week, they were like, and Saints Row is coming. Like, you guys should have delayed it again. Whenever this next patch hits, or whenever they finally get their patches out to actually get this game fixed, that's when that game should have shipped. Not now. Because it's fucked up. And that's extremely disappointing. Again, without the bugs, without the, if it had even fewer scripting issues, if it had just like felt like, okay, well, this is possible. There are cases where like sometimes you open the playlist menu where you can kind of set custom soundtracks and stuff like that, and that menu just never fills in. I just sat there for like 2 minutes going like, is this thing ever going to pop up? No? All right, well, okay. I saw a thing, and this is something, like, it leads to a situation where you're just like, did I see that or did I not see that? And so now I'm questioning a lot of different stuff. Like, early on in the game, I did, other games have done this where like if you are driving from point A to point B and you drive through a parking lot, it'll be like, oh, that's a shortcut, and it'll point you through that lot and it'll say shortcut unlocked. This did that once. I have not seen it since, and I've definitely taken some shortcuts, and it never routes me through them. I don't know, like, and that doesn't even get to the part where like, there are advances you could make in this genre of game to make it better. Like, for example, when I get in a helicopter, it is still showing GPS for driving on the ground. And it doesn't show me, there's no like circle on the edge of my mini map saying, here's the direction you need to be driving it, like flying in. So instead, I kind of have to fly along the road path and be like, oh, I need to turn left here. I could have gone faster if I had just gone in a straight fucking line, but without going into the full on map and looking at it myself and go like, oh, northwest. Okay. All right. Like I could not know that without having to pause the game and go look at it and do all that other stuff. It's just like stuff like that, like quality of life things that you just go like, in this day and age, these games should do this. They should do this. They should do this. They should do this. And it just feels old. It just feels very old. And it feels like, it like from a gameplay perspective and options and just like modes of play, things you do from mission to mission, this just doesn't feel up to, like, I would rather go back and play Saints Row 3 or 4. Because those feel like fully, like, they feel like complete thoughts in a sense, you know what I mean? Like, this feels like, oh, we've deliberately tried to make this style of game, and this is our twist on it. This game doesn't have a twist unless it's, past the 20 out. Maybe 5 hours from now, I'm going to be like, oh my God, something amazing. But again, I'm like 20 hours in and I haven't seen any kind of big differences in gameplay from stuff that, is decades old at this point, like this style of game. And it just feels like it's a little soulless. It feels like the writing and some of the dialogue and stuff just feels like it's a little bit all over the place. Like they start with this idea of these roommates and then they kind of just don't really go anywhere. Well, they don't really go too many places with that. You have missions where you're like kind of going with these people to do their thing, and it's like the equivalent of like a loyalty mission, where at the end of it they're like, oh, you did this mission with your friend and now they have a shotgun instead of a pistol, or whatever. And so you have those sorts of things where you're like doing favors for your friends. It's like the dialogue just doesn't, it just feels like it could be, the whole game just feels like it could be more than it is. And it just feels like something that that maybe those ideas were there at some point and they just they had to cut them, or they had, I don't know what is going on with this game or what happened behind the scenes, but it just feels like it's missing a lot of ideas. It feels like it's missing unique moments. It feels like, I haven't really seen anything that's, there are definitely missions where it's going to be like, oh, we're going to force play some music from the soundtrack here. Like, oh, you're doing this robbery? We're going to listen to Ante Up. And you're like, okay, I've heard it 12 times because it's just on the radio. But okay, we can listen to it again. It's a great song. Fine. It doesn't feel like it has these big set piece moments of like, oh my God, now we're doing this. That's crazy. Like it builds up to things and it's like, all right, you're ready for the big heist. And then it happens and it's just like, oh, I like all I really did here was run forward and shoot everyone. Like there's not really that much else going on, and it feels like a game missing a heart. It's lighthearted, but in a very non-specific way. And I think that story, the story and the characters, I think have potential. There's one extremely funny, there's a bit at the beginning of that game that they go back to a handful of times over the course of the game that feels like it was just tailor written for me, and I'm so excited to see it. It's so fun. It's great. It's some great knife comedy. There's some really solid fucking knife purchasing jokes in that game that is just fucking perfect. And that is almost worse because you just see it and just go like, yep, man, if this game had better writing throughout, that would go a long way. If these characters were more engaging, that would go a long way. And it doesn't pick a direction. Instead, it's just like, yep, here's this, there's a template for this style of game, and we sure did make one. And you see little bits of potential like that around there. And then you spend the rest of the time driving from point A to point B. The driving is not terrible. They've got it. You can hit the A button to just drift, and you can just hold the A button down and just keep drifting. And so you can kind of just drift in a circle forever if you have enough space. And it's a really weird mechanic at first, but once you get used to it, whipping around corners and stuff actually feels really good. And so they've done some pretty decent work on the driving model. You've got to, if you hit the X button and steer to the side, you can kind of jut out and do, kind of side swipe attacks and stuff. And that's the best way to take down enemy cars when you're being chased and stuff like that. And that's nice. But like, I feel like I'm struggling to like find like what are the things about this game that are actually nice and good, because the rest of it is, it's fine at best. At best, you're like, cool, all right, well, they made another one of this style of game, and okay. And there's bugs like, so when you collect cars, whenever you take a car back to your garage and drive it in the garage, it becomes part of your list of cars that you can spawn at any time when you go to the garage. And you can upgrade them, and, obviously you can put rims on them, but also you can buy like an off-road kit or nitrous, and each car will have its own unlockable ability, each style of car. So like one of them, you have really good air control in the cars too. So you can do 360s in the air, like little spins and barrel rolls and crazy shit like that. And that's fun. And so you can put nitrous on the cars. And then one of the unlockables is you can use nitrous in the air. And so it's like this like halfway to Rocket League kind of thing. And you're like, oh man, if it had like 30 more things like that, even though that aspect of the game is not as good as it maybe, you don't have as much air control as maybe you would want, it's still kind of cool. Like if it just had a bunch of other stuff in there that was kind of cool, and you're like, oh, that's a weird thing to unlock. Like, oh wow, that's a fun thing that I can use in this specific way and do some crazy shit. And it just doesn't have enough of that. It's not a wacky game. It's not a madcap comedy. It's not like, the writing is lighthearted, but it's like in some cases it feels like they meant to go back and do another pass to insert jokes or have setups for jokes pay off that just don't. And it's really unfortunate, because there's aspects of this game that you see and you just go like, yeah, there's a tiny hint of something here, but they just didn't. They have not found it. They did not find it. They did not pull it out. And that's maybe the saddest thing of all, Saints Row is in desperate need of a reboot. They left it in a position where it was a prime candidate for a reboot because of how crazy that story got. And you're like, okay, it needs to be something else now. It has to be something else. And so they tried to take the bones of what Saints Row has always been, right? Like Saints Row has always been about your crew, about your family. It has always been this like diverse, multicultural crew, right? Your Johnny Gats and just all like different characters from different races forming a crazy gang and doing a bunch of crazy shit. And you make your own character, and your character is the craziest one of all. And it has that in a different, like it still kind of does that. Like it's all new characters, and that's fine. But it's just the writing is really dull and all that sort of stuff. And I don't think they pull it off. They do not pull it off. And that's a bummer. I don't know what direction I would go with a Saints Row reboot. I don't know how I would solve this particular problem, right? Because without, like, okay, we need to do something totally different. It needs to be crazy. But I think the thing I would have tried to not do is I would have tried to not make a very standard GTA style video game in 2022. I think I would have looked at that and be like, we can use that as the framework, but it also has to be this. It also has to go here. We have to take it to an extreme in a different way than Saints Row 3 and 4 took it to an extreme, because we've done that already. Like, it needs more. And you could make the argument of like, well, that's when this reboot gets its sequel, or it's not. But like, I look at this, I look at the state that this shipped in of being as broken as it is, and I look at just how underwhelming that game is, even when it seems to be working as intended. This seems like the end for Saints Row to me. Unless they let it lie for a decade and then someone tries to dust it off. But like, this is it. This has to be it for Saints Row. They should stop making these at this point. If this is the game they're going to make, cut it off. Do something else. And I do not mean Agents of Mayhem 2. I mean, if you cannot figure out a way to do something exciting with this formula, even if you want to make a very standard kind of GTA style open world crime game, like all of that other stuff, like I think that there's an even more engaging way to do that than what they did here. And so I don't, again, I'm not here to like place blame, right? Because how do I know what happened? All I can say is, if I were the Embracer Group, I sure would want this game to ship in at least a decent state, because I'm trying to make a statement and say, yes, we have rebranded as Play On, and then we're part of the Embracer Group, and we're doing this, and we're doing big things over here. And then you can say like, hey, Saints Row maybe wasn't a hard hit, but it's foundational, and we're getting our feet under us, and instead it ships in this fucked up state where you just look at it and go like, oh, the Embracer Group talking a lot of talk and then shipping a bunch of broken shit. Nice work, guys. Wow, you guys are really a big deal. This seems damaging to their entire narrative to have this game come out in this state. And that's unfortunate. Because again, I think that there's a lot of potential around the edges of this thing. And I also, it should not have shipped in this state. And I don't know what happened behind this. I know that the game had already been delayed once, right? So maybe at some point you're just like, fuck it, we got to get it out the door. But like looking at the game and how, it's crashes. It's not stuff that you're like, oh, I don't, also I don't like the way the guns shoot, but like whatever. That's like a taste thing. Some games ship like that and some people still like them, whatever. But it's shipping it in this like broken, and people have had, I've not seen the console versions, but I've definitely seen people complaining about their time with the console version in ways that in some cases seem even more dramatic than what I've experienced on PC. I just look at it and go like, gosh, how did you not take a look at this and go, we've got to give it a little bit more time. Like, I know it's going to hurt to push it back again, but if we can just get this, but honestly, you know what? What's it reviewing at? It's like somewhere in the mid 60s on Metacritic or whatever, right? That's where this game belongs, even in a working state. Like, this game is at best a 70. And if people are already reviewing it there, then maybe they were just fucking right to ship it. Who fucking cares? Right? Yuck. But somewhere between the 60 and the 70 is probably where this game lands, even if it is firing on all cylinders and working. And if it is not broken, if they fix up all the bugs, it doesn't suddenly become like, this is a great video game. It's like, no, this is okay. All right. It's okay. Sure. Why not? So maybe they got the review scores that they always were going to get. I don't know. That's Saints Row. I am probably going to finish it because I feel like I'm close at this point and I'm disappointed enough. I don't know. Like, yeah, I wish that this game was better. And this is one of those, again, I don't make video games, I don't fucking know. But this is one of those situations where I look at it and go like, gosh, this sure seems like it could have been better if it had this, if the guns felt like this, if it had been balanced in this way. You know, like there's like clear cases where you just go like, yep, this. These are clear things that would have made this game more engaging, separate from the bugs and lack of polish and all of that sort of stuff. You know, at the end of the day, it's just not that much fun to play. And so they put you into these missions that you're like, okay, you're going to work your way from point A to point B. It's going to be a very long, drawn out thing. And what you're going to do from point A to point B is shoot everyone that gets in your way. By the way, the shooting is not much fun. And you're like, okay, well, great. I guess let's do that then. And so I've been doing that for about 20 hours or so. And, it feels like the end is in sight. Like I said, I'm level 16 and the level cap seems to be level 20. I've been doing a lot of side stuff. You know, it's got insurance fraud in it. It has all the stuff technically in terms of like it's checking boxes and all that stuff on that front. It has a lot of that, but it also has progression blocks in the game where it's like, okay, to unlock the next mission, you need to have not only placed 2 criminal empire things around the map, which is like, it's the groups of side missions. Like you drive all the toxic waste trucks back to the dump and don't crash, because that's fun. Driving and not crashing in these games. What a good idea. Or like crime scene cleanup. And there's 14 of these things and you need to complete 2 of them to their fullest before the next missions will unlock. And I'm like, I don't want to fucking do any of this. So I picked the shortest ones, which were the prototype weapon one. And there's one that I guess I won't say what the other one is because it's technically kind of a spoiler thing, but there's a very goofy set of side missions with their own weapons and stuff like that like is funny at first. And then there are enough missions in that you're like, I am done doing this. So yeah, I don't know. There's like having stuff that steps in and halts your progression until you complete a bunch of the side missions is a bummer. You know, the weapons aren't weird enough. The weapons don't feel great. You know, it's just, and maybe I'm on the cusp of unlocking like 7 or 8 types of crazy guns that feel fun, but like I've played through what seems like almost most of most of this game shooting the same 3 weapons the entire time. And none of them feel great. That is Saints Row. And I am extremely disappointed. This felt like it could have been an amazing moment for this franchise. Like, hey, we're going to reboot it. We're going to do, you know, this felt like it could have been a moment for this franchise. Instead, I look at it and go like, they should never make another one of these again. This has to be it for this. This game is too rough and too bland in too many ways. You walk away. Walk away. You don't get another shot like this now. Like you blew the reboot. I don't want to see another one of these. If this is what you're building off of, don't do it. So there you have it. Why don't we take a break? If you're watching live, that means that we're gonna watch this Gamescom thing. But if you're not watching live, it means that we're gonna come back and talk about Arcade Paradise and Midnight Fight Express and a bunch of other stuff, and also probably some of the stuff that is about to get announced at Gamescom. Weird timing this week. All right, we'll take a break, and we'll be right back. You know, if you're like me, you've maybe stepped away from alcohol consumption at the level that perhaps you were a decade ago or 5 years ago, even in some cases. You know, I just, you know, you hit a point where you're like, this isn't, it's messing me up too much the next day. It's just it's a hassle. Like I'm not enjoying this all that much because of that morning after disaster. You know what I mean? Well, now maybe you can indulge a little bit more, or at least think about putting alcohol back in your life if you want, you know, as a social sort of thing, because of Z-Biotics. Now, Z-Biotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. And here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. And it's this byproduct lingering around in there, not dehydration, that's to blame for that rough next day. Z-Biotics produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down before it can hassle you. It's designed to work like your liver, but in your gut where you need it most. All you got to do is drink Z-Biotics before drinking alcohol, drink responsibly, and then get a good night's sleep to feel your best tomorrow. These things are super easy. You know, the Z-Biotics drink, it's a very tiny little shot, like half shot. You know, it's a very small little thing. You just chug that back, and then you don't have to think about it. You know, just be yourself and be responsible, and bounce back better the next day. And that's powerful. You know, then it's like, oh well, if I go out and just go to this social thing, and yeah, there's a little bit of social drinking, I can have a couple of drinks. And not be like, just water for me. You know, like I can indulge a little bit. And that's nice to be able to do that again. Hey, give Z-Biotics a try for yourself. Go to zbiotics.com/Jeff to get 15% off your first order when you use the code Jeff at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, it will refund your money. No questions asked. Hey, Labor Day weekend is right around the corner. So you can order a pack of Z-Biotics for you and your friends today to make sure you get it in time for that long weekend. All right? Head over to zbiotics.com/Jeff and use the code Jeff at checkout for 15% off. And thanks to Z-Biotics for sponsoring the episode. All right, we're back. We're back in podcast mode now. So if you're listening to the podcast, we just took a 2-hour break to watch Gamescom opening night live. Jeff Keighley's celebration of German video games. And it turns out I feel like the announced lineup before the show was pretty much the biggest stuff with the exception of Dead Island 2. Which was formally announced and is set in Los Angeles, and I thought it looked okay. I don't know. I was not the biggest Dead Island 1 fan. It was very, you know, at the time, Dead Island was pretty cool and did things that a lot of other games didn't, and it's where we got the term, like, good Techland, bad Techland, I think came out of some of that stuff. But, gosh, yeah, it's been a long time. And a lot of people have worked on a Dead Island game, and now this one will ship in February. It's the team at Dambuster says they've been working on it for about 4 years now. So a lot of work got thrown away along the way. Los Angeles is not an island. So Dead Island 2 is set in Los Angeles, but it's not. They should have thought of that before they named it Dead Island in the first place. I think. But what are you going to do? The Dead Island thing, the Dead Island 2 trailer has a lighthearted, you know, because Dead Island is kind of like lighthearted a little bit, right? It's wacky zombie fun. Look at all the murdering you're doing. And it fits in a very similar lane as Saints Row, which just shipped today. Of course, if you're listening to it's been 2 hours now since I talked about Saints Row. And honestly, I'm ready to talk about it all over again. Like I'm just like, oh man, I can't believe that game is not better than it is. I can't believe that game is not more than it is. It's unfortunate. And Dead Island 2 has a similar look to it, and just like, look at the crazy fun we're having with the murdering of zombies. And I wonder how that game will be when it comes out. I mean, you know, obviously this team's only been on it only been on it for 4 years. So it's not like this is some cursed Duke Nukem Forever-esque thing where all that stuff from day one of development is still in the game and it's some weird mess. Like, they changed teams. Presumably there was a big cutoff. Maybe some assets made the jump, maybe not. Who knows? And, you know, they probably just started over from scratch and made Dead Island 2. And I don't know. It feels like Dying Light came along and said, no, I mean, which it literally did. Dying Light came along and said, hey, this is the next evolution of the Dead Island style of gameplay. And they did it very effectively. Like, people, you know, really were drawn to the parkour and all the other stuff that they did in Dying Light, the day-night cycle, all that stuff. Like, it's a, you know, a slow starting game, but a very cool game. Dying Light 1. A game I did not expect to enjoy, but ended up liking a fair amount. Not as much as others, but, you know, but I got quite a bit out of it at the end of the day. Dying Light 2 did not do it for me because it just kind of, again, it had a very slow start and the open world nature of it. And it was like a thing of like, oh man, there are a lot of key moves you unlock in that game over the first handful of hours that you're like, man, this stuff should have been in there from the beginning. This is annoying. And so it's weird to say like, oh, hey, now we're gonna have Dead Island 2, which I guess this is the third, right? This is the third Dead Island game. Because there was oh man, Riptide, and was Riptide the game that they put out and shut down, or was that the one that came out? Because there was another. Right, there was the MOBA. That was the one that came out and got shut down. Okay. I am looking at this now. So, okay, there was Dead Island in 2011, then Dead Island Riptide in 2013, and then something called Escape Dead Island. There was a third-person adventure for PS3, 360, and Windows from Fat Shark? Is that a real thing? Are they lying? Dead Island Epidemic was the MOBA that got canceled. Then there was Dead Island Definitive Edition in 2016 that was the remaster of Dead Island and Dead Island Riptide. And then there was a mobile game called Dead Island Survivors. And now we have Dead Island. And now we have Dead Island 2. Here are the things I remember about Dead Island. It's that Who Do You Voodoo song that Kitty, the former Kitty Pryde, mentioned in a song. And you clubbed zombies. That's it. Yeah, melee zombie game. And the trucks. Oh, the trucks. And then Dying Light came along and was like a more serious and more interesting take on some of that stuff. That's how I remember it. But it's been a while. Cool. I don't know. Dead Island 2 seemed like that obviously was the biggest thing there, considering it was, not technically announced and it just kind of leaked out. And Leslie Benzie's game. Well, the studio was it Rocket Based Boy? If that's not the name of that studio, I'm starting in my own studio, Rocket Based Boy. Build a Rocket Boy. Build a Rocket Boy. Okay. They showed Everywhere, which is a game that they talked about, and that website for Everywhere is, I mean, maybe they redesigned it today, but they have been mentioning this game that they've been working on for quite a while. Is it literally okay? So I'm sorry to just like sit here and talk to chat in the middle of a podcast. It doesn't. I know it's always a little weird to listen to after the fact, but is that game literally an NFT game? Because when it was first coming up on the live stream, people kept talking about, it has job openings for blockchain engineers. There you go. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's one way to get a lot of funding if you were doing that blockchain stuff at the exact right time, which now is maybe a little too late, but you could you could certainly rope in a lot of fucking money from people by saying, hey, guess what? One of the key architects of Grand Theft Auto wants to make a blockchain game. Do you want in? You're going to be able to do everything, everywhere. People will line up. Rubes will line up to fund that. How is Andreessen Horowitz? How much money have they fucking thrown at this thing? We'll see if they stick with that. If they end up making that a blockchain game, that will be supremely disappointing. But also not super surprising, I guess, if we really had to think about it. Okay, so we talked about Saints Row. All of the news pretty much just happened as part of that show, but also not that much. It was a very quiet week for news, and I thought, well, hey, there's probably going to be a lot of stuff at Gamescom, and then we just got on the other side of that show, and there was certainly stuff, but not enough to make me... This still seems like kind of a weirdly quiet week. Anyway, other games I have been playing. There was a sweet window there where I was playing Rumbleverse on the Steam Deck. I figured out how to install Lutris, and then used Lutris to install the Epic Games Store client onto my Steam Deck. And then from there was able to install Epic Online Services, and then from there was able to install Rumbleverse, and then I could play Rumbleverse in bed, if you know what I mean. I could play the video game on my Steam Deck in bed. That's what I meant. And it was a glorious time. And that was how I was playing most of the game. I would go to bed and then get in a few matches of Rumbleverse late in the day, because it's just had there's been a lot of stuff coming out. I've been playing Saints Row, been playing a lot of other stuff. I have not been able to play as much Rumbleverse as I want to be playing, but that door is closed now because last week they shipped an anti-cheat patch. There's been a bit of a to reading up on it. It sounds like that there have been people cheating at Rumbleverse, and so they rolled out some of their first anti-cheat updates. And along with those anti-cheat updates, it broke the ability to get in game on the Steam Deck. So now you can connect to a match, but the second you're in your kind of pre-match lobby before you launch into the city, and the minute you make contact with another player, it just goes and kicks you out of the game. Which that happened on the other end of a patch that they said was going to start up their anti-cheat stuff. And, hey, you have to solve the cheating problem, right? You can't have cheaters in your game. And they never officially supported the Steam Deck platform to begin with. And so, I can't necessarily be too mad at it. It's frustrating. I wish that stuff just worked. But obviously, Linux and Proton and all of these compatibility layers and all this other stuff is still very much developing technology and all of that sort of stuff. And so, of course, they're going to have anti-cheat. Of course, that anti-cheat is going to potentially get in the way. And they're not necessarily going to have a huge incentive to get it running on there because the game is not even on Steam. And presumably never will be, since Epic is publishing it. But I guess I don't know that for sure. But I think there are ways to implement anti-cheat that would not break Steam Deck compatibility. So hopefully they just kind of do that on the side and eventually get to a point where that game can run again, because that would be pretty rad to be able to play that game there. But I get it. It's not even a game that's on Steam. It's a weird thing to begin with. So it's just one of the fun things about tinkering with games on the Steam Deck is you're kind of able to sometimes get away with doing some stuff that it doesn't seem like you should be able to do. And it's rad when you pull it off. But hey, speaking of which, I was not able to get Saints Row to run on the Steam Deck also, but I did not try a bunch of different options there. So maybe some other people will have more luck than I did there. Not that I mean, you could also just not play Saints Row. That might be a better solution. Games that do work on the Steam Deck, though. Midnight Fight Express. This game is also on Game Pass. It is on Steam. And I highly recommend Midnight Fight Express. It is an isometric beat 'em up kind of game. You are comboing attacks together. There is sort of a Batman Arkham-like quality to the combat in terms of like you are kind of leaping from guy to guy as you're kind of working your way through a crowd, and you can spend skill points that make that a little bit more exaggerated, so you can kind of keep a fight going and all of that sort of stuff. Really fun weapon interactions in that game. There are just some brutal maneuvers as you upgrade your character and get more skill points and start to work your way through the skill tree. You start to get more and more finishers that are just like you stomped on a guy's head and it just explodes. And it's just like, from that isometric perspective, it just has a very brutal pace and look to it. It gets difficult in spots because it's one of those games like an Arkham game where you've got like different enemies that require different methods for you to take them on and take them out. So it's like, here's the guy who blocks, so you need to do the heavy attack to him. Here's the guy with the shield, and so you can either punch your way through the shield and he'll eventually drop it, or do, there's different tactics you can employ to take on different types of enemies, much like the Batman, much like that Batman combat that everyone spent a good decade biting off of, and now I feel like we don't see as much of it, and we don't see as much of it from this isometric perspective either. And so it's like, it's this refreshingly cool, and again, brutal. There's something about that game because so much of it is melee focused, and you're picking up chairs and cardboard boxes, but also you're getting, hammers and knives and pipes and like all this other stuff, big blunt objects to just murder people with. But occasionally you also just find a pistol. A guy will come at you and take a couple shots. You knock him down, get his gun. And there's just something about the gunplay in that game that just seems fucked up. I mean, it's a game that's got, like I said, you're stomping on people's heads and they're blowing up and doing all that sort of stuff. But there is something about the way the guns act and behave in that game where when you double tap, when you shoot them twice and they go down, generally there's some bigger enemies that take more shots, and it's a little weird there because it's the guns just seem fucked up. Like when you get it and you clear a room out and you're like, whew, well, I just fucking brutally murdered all those people. Even after like 20 minutes of straight up beating the shit out of them with lead pipes and cracking skulls, like all that other stuff that you do in this game that is also like really good looking and quite brutal as well. There's just something about the guns in this game that just feel fucking bad. But I mean, like, in a way that you're like, well, we did some bad shit here today, fellas. I gotta drop this and we've gotta go. Because holy shit. That's Midnight Fight Express. The levels are meant to be replayable. It's got like 40-ish levels in it, and some of them are incredibly short. Like there's a bathroom level where at the start of it, you walk into this big bathroom, you fight like 3 waves of guys, and you walk out the other end, and that's technically the end of a level. First time you finish a level, you get a skill point. You can go back to the skill tree, put it on your skill tree, and go like, okay, I want to have melee finishers. I want to have different combos. I want to have, like the grappling. Like there's 2 trees I haven't been able to access yet. One is just called, I believe, rope or rope gun. So I don't know what the fuck you're going to do there, but like you get into these tiny rooms, these tiny situations, and have to like beat the shit out of a lot of guys. And it feels very good when you pull it off. When you do fail, the restart is very fast. And so you can kind of get right back in. And that's pretty key as well. Because there are parts of the game that I was surprised at how difficult it got by. And I only played like the first 10-ish levels of the 40. I need to get back into it because I stopped playing it to play Saints Row. And now I need to get back into it. And yeah, it's great. I think Midnight Fight Express is a great game. You should absolutely look at it. Like I said, it's on Game Pass. It is also on Steam. And There's a video. I recorded a video of it last week that is up on the YouTube channel that I believe you can get to. The short, if you want to go to guard.bike, that'll be a shortcut to get to that YouTube channel, or just search my name on YouTube. I don't know. There are multiple ways to get to websites. I don't know, if you go to Lycos, head over to Lycos and check it out. But yeah, Midnight Fight Express is great. Go check that out. Arcade Paradise, also outstanding. I've become quite obsessed with it, insofar as it is a laundromat simulator, but also you instead quickly realize that you're going to make more money at your laundromat by buying arcade machines and jukeboxes and all that other stuff. And so they have built, I think, 35 or so different old-timey feeling arcade games, and some of them are very directly inspired. Like there's one that's just a pixel art Mr. Driller, and you can just play that, and it's got upgrades and all that other stuff. But also, you know, there are racing games and puzzle games and just a wide variety. There's a game that is basically Pac-Man versus, meaning it's got the mini map in the corner like that GameCube game did. But it has like GTA style font work and graphics and stuff, and you're in a like a Lamborghini getting cash instead of a Pac-Man eating dots, and cops are chasing you. It's like silly mashups in that. Like that game's not amazing, but it's very funny to see, like, we took Pac-Man and did a GTA to it, which is a silly fucking idea. Arcade Paradise is really awesome. Again, there's a video of that, like an hour and a half of that, up on that YouTube channel of mine. And I highly recommend that game as well. Midnight Fight Express and Arcade Paradise are my picks to click for the week. That said, why don't we get into some news? Destiny has a grappling hook now. That's it. They're putting a grappling hook into Destiny. They are finally, I think, rolling out this week or very soon is the last rework of the Arc class, which is getting reworked into 3.0 style. I have been waiting for that for a while now. As a longtime Arc player, I am very excited to see the reworked Arc class. They put up a blog post about the reworked Arc skill tree or whatever they call them now, and their comparison point was like, we wanted to make this subclass like the video game equivalent of fucking Crank 2. And I'm like, yes, great, okay, fuck. I already like Destiny, and now you're telling me you are trying to make the very fucking subclass I play a little bit more like fucking Crank 2? Well, fuck me. I am in. I could not be any more in than that. And then they go and they put out a fucking trailer that says, by the way, the next big expansion we're putting out has grappling hooks in it. And you're like, shit. Fuck, guys. All right. Okay. Great. I'm on board to try. I will try. I will play this. That is something I say every time they say they were putting out new Destiny stuff. Even when it looks not so great, I will still check out some Destiny. But God, this stuff looks awesome. This expansion that they're putting out, this next big thing, they're saying is kind of the end of the Light versus Dark saga. And that's interesting. I don't, like, there's a part of me that just keeps waiting for them to say, like, by the way, we're not going to call it Destiny 2 anymore. And maybe they need to bring back all the D1 content to truly do that in a way that doesn't alienate the community. To get away with it, I guess I mean. To say, yes, we're going to call it, we're just going to call it Destiny now. Right? I don't know. Anyway, it sounds like that new subclass stuff is out now, so I am going to fucking play some Destiny 2 tonight. That is my plan, is to play some Destiny 2 tonight. Sega is making some movies. Have you heard of Sonic Hedgehog, who's a big movie star from the films? Sonic Hedgehog is originally a Sega video game. I don't know if you know that. And now, according to The Hollywood Reporter, who reports on Hollywood, Sega has partnered with a company called Picture Start, which is responsible for a film called Am I Okay? And another movie called Cha Cha Real Smooth. I have not heard of either of these. I will just say up front. They are working on film adaptations of, which Sega properties do you think they are? Maybe you already heard this story, but which Sega, and I think I talked about it earlier in this very show. They are going to work on films based on the Sega franchises, Space Channel 5, and Comix Zone. So that initially you go, all right, I don't know. What? Who do you cast as Ulala in that game? Lady Miss Kier from Delight is, if you were making this movie, 25 years ago, would have been the right answer. Someone in chat said Margot Robbie. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Ariana Grande. Sure. Gwen Stefani. Maybe. Yeah, maybe. They've got a little bit of information on each one of the movies here that actually, okay, I'll say up front now, I won't make you wait. What they have written about these games in terms of how they intend to turn them into a movie, the basic kind of pitch, the log line, whatever you want to call it, sold me on both of these films as like, yeah, okay, sure. Here's what Hollywood Reporter says. Space Channel 5, a comedy/dance adaptation of the cult classic 1999 dance game, will tell the story of a hapless fast food worker who was recruited by a freedom reporter from the future to save the world from aliens using the one thing that unites all people on the planet, our love of silly viral dances. I don't know if you noticed, like I don't think I realized it until I read that sentence, is that we became Space Channel 5 at some point. Space Channel 5 predicted the existence and popularity of TikTok in a way that nothing has. They are right. The people on the planet love silly viral dances. I'm not saying that is a good thing or a bad thing. I will leave that to you to decide. But in terms of making this a film and making it make sense, yep, they're 100% right. They are 100% right. That is genius. That is stone cold genius. Like, yep. The dancing news reporter, guess what people like now? Dumb fucking dances. You know what she did in that game nonstop? Dumb fucking dances. And so I assume that the freedom reporter is Ulala, and she comes and recruits the hapless fast food worker. And so you've got a duo, and they are both learning how to dance. CGI Space Michael? Question mark? Just gonna say no. Comix Zone, again, Comix Zone, I think, kind of writes itself too, because the idea of you got sucked into the world of comic books and you have to fight your way out. Like, yeah, okay, of course. Their take on it has a little bit more depth. Comix Zone, an adaptation of the cult console game, follows a jaded comic book creator and a young queer writer of color who, when sucked into the final issue of his popular series, must put aside their differences to stop a dangerous supervillain from sowing complete destruction. In the process, they wittily explore the ever-evolving art of storytelling itself. And then, oh snap! They fight their way out of the comic book. And then the execs in the room go, whoa, I really do like that. Yeah. Yeah, I think, yes, a movie in which people get trapped in a comic book and have to fight their way out. I mean, we've done that. That has to have happened. That movie already exists somewhere, right? Surely someone must have done that by now. But I don't know. I think Comix Zone was always a fucking mediocre game at best, and people still like fall over themselves about that game, and I think they're wrong and weird. Comix Zone was never a great video game. It was a really cool look and a really great concept. But the actual playing of that game was never good. Never good. Embracer Group bought a bunch of stuff on the eve, and the week before Saints Row's release. They bought a bunch more studios. They have been acquiring stuff quite a bit. And so let's see. What's the list here? They bought a Middle-earth Enterprises. Some part of the Lord of the Rings rights are now theirs, but not all of them, I guess. But they have control over a lot of that. Tripwire Interactive they picked up. Let's see here. Tatsujin, who's the company that now controls all the rights to the old the Toaplan IP, like Snow Bros. Nick and Tom, the Snow Bros, they now, the fucking Embracer Group can now make a Snow Bros movie. Also Truxton, which is a heck of a classic shooter. They bought Tuxedo Labs, the developer of Teardown, which is wild. Man, Snow Bros. Yes, Snow Bros. Newer, yes, the new elves. Newer elves, indeed. The newest elves possible. Yeah, they bought Tripwire Interactive, who is known for Killing Floor. They picked up Singtrix, which is a company that does some like singing recognition, like karaoke style stuff. So maybe they make a music game out of that. I don't know. Limited Run Games, the company that puts out physical copies of old games. They now own that. They bought a company called Bitwave Games. It was part of the Toaplan stuff. They were going to bring Gimmick out on consoles. And they established a new group called Embracer Free Mode. And yeah, I don't know. A bunch of weird moves. They bought a bunch of studios. Remember, it was earlier this year, I want to say, that they got an investment of $1 billion from Saudi Arabia. And so the Saudis control 8% of that company now. And so the total spend here is maybe around half of that money. This story is not going to go away. We talk about the Embracer Group and them buying stuff and all that other stuff, but the kind of relatively low key but consistent level of investment that Saudi Arabia is putting into the games industry is they own some significant portion of SNK now, which is a bummer. They've got investments all over the place in games, and so it's a lot of news stories that are just like talking about the Embracer Group, and then they're like, oh, and by the way, they took $1 billion from Saudi Arabia. By the way, Saudi Arabia killed this journalist. And you're like, ugh. And Embracer had to put out a statement on the heels of that investment saying, like, we stand for freedom, whatever it was. So Embracer seems like they're not done yet, that they want to buy more, but also, and I should check. I don't know what happened. I know the overall market was down, so it's not quite as cut and dry as this article makes it sound. But Steven Totillo over at Axios noted that basically right around the time that the Saints Row reviews started to hit yesterday, their stock took a dive. And interesting, you don't really hear a lot about review scores doing anything to a stock. It's always a theoretical sort of thing. When I was reviewing games a lot, there was always that idea of just like, you're affecting business. Like, yeah, in some abstract way, yes, sometimes I am telling people to not buy a video game, but the solution is not me. The solution is to make better games. that people want to buy. Having someone call out and be like, hey, I know the marketing makes this game look good, but turns out it's bad. That is a symptom of the actual problem of making bad games. And not the point where you... Anyway. So, yeah, it's hard to really kind of have a big causation thing here, because I think the market was down overall for the day. So, you know, how much of it was that, how much of it was these reviews, but the timing was certainly a fun coincidence, if nothing else, and maybe there's something to it. But honestly, it's interesting. You know, we talked a lot about Saints Row at the top of the show, and I think that it's weird. I think that Embracer Group buying all these studios and, hey, we're putting out all this stuff, and like most of the stuff that they're associated with is like, you know, they're kind of B game-ish in a way. Like Saints Row, on the other side of all these patches that will presumably make Saints Row work, it'll be a absolutely acceptable B game. You know, you'll be like, hey, do you want to play a pretty generic open world crime game? If so, this one is fine for that. You could do it. You know, the problems with that game are many, and it is not a great game. And I don't, you know, and I think if they just patch up the parts where it's broken and crashes and the scripting bugs or whatever else, that's a game that I would probably review somewhere in the, if you will allow me to speak Metacritic for a while, that is a game that is a mid-60s all day long. That's a fucking 64 to 66 Metacritic all fucking day. It's a $66 bill all day long. When it works. In its current state, that score seems high to me. And yet, if you go to Metacritic right now, that's about where it ended up. So the lesson there is like, again, did Embracer just say, hey, you could fix the game, we could delay it again, but it's not going to impact the review scores. It's not like this game is great. It's not like we're turning a 70 into an 80 here by letting you patch it. Fuck it, ship it. Was that again, I don't know. I'll never know, right? But that game should not have shipped in the state that it shipped in. It should have shipped better. And it at least would have been a functional game that you go like, yeah, this is disappointing, but like, you could play it. It's a light recommendation. It's I mean, I would not pay full price for this, but you know, there are worse things you could do than play Saints Row. And so Embracer feels like a studio that's like is trying to position itself as this gigantic thing, but like none of the games they have are... Borderlands is the biggest thing they have, right? I mean, Borderlands, they're going to make that movie. Like, Borderlands is like, what? It's like $1 billion franchise, but they have to share that with 2K to a certain extent because 2K owns a piece of that still. So, but I think the biggest thing that Embracer is affiliated with has to be Borderlands, right? Anyway. Maybe they'll just keep buying stuff and they'll get there. You call, someone in the chat is calling Borderlands 3 a B game. I think Borderlands 3 is tragic is a harsh word, but yikes. As someone, man, I've said it before, but Borderlands 1 was like a few clicks away from being, I think, damn near perfect for what it was in terms of just like, hey, we made this loot game, but it's a first-person shooter. It's got a really interesting look to it. The writing is like lighthearted and fun. The big problem with Borderlands 1, though, is that the boss fights were bad. You got to the rack hive in that game, and it just didn't move. And I just shot the rack. I remember getting to the rack hive for the first time, being like, oh, this is a big boss fight. And then I just pointed at it and pulled the trigger, and then it died. I was like, what the fuck? It's a game that needed better boss fights. That's its primary sin, if you want to call it that, of Borderlands 1, is that those boss fights were really underwhelming. But the rest of that game, I have 1,000 achievement points in Borderlands 1, and I got all those points before the game even fucking came out. Reviewing that game, I played through it twice and did all the new game plus shit and fucking hit the level cap and fucking all that stuff. Because I loved that game, but it just fell short in some key ways. And so I was always like, man, when they make another Borderlands, I bet they do. And my mind would go wild, going like, oh, they could expand on it like this and this and this. And then Borderlands 2 came out, and, you know, I did it to myself with expectations, but it's like every choice they made in Borderlands 2 was the exact opposite of what I wanted Borderlands 2 to be. And it's been like that ever since, where it's just like, oh, man. But those games have been selling well, so who the fuck am I, right? Like, I look at it and go like, oh, if they had done this, then Borderlands would be incredible. But they went on to make fucking zillions of dollars on Borderlands 2 and 3, and I'm sure 3 did okay, right? And so, turns out people have, and this should not come as a surprise, and this is going to sound snobbish, and I'm sorry, but it is going to sound snobbish. Turns out a lot of people have fucking terrible senses of fucking humor. Turns out a lot of people out there buying video games have bad fucking taste in comedy. Because they fucking bought Borderlands 2 and they're like, oh, I love the memes. What are you going to do? What the fuck are you going to do? Anyway, that's going to do it for the podcast. We'll get to emails next week. We ran long, weird time because of the Gamescom thing in the middle there. The full list of Sega Mega Drive Mini 2 titles got out there, and they are reworking Space Harrier 2 to run at a full frame rate, and that's exciting. Even if Space Harrier 2 is not a great game, that makes me want to buy one of these dumb things that I definitely didn't want beforehand. But I do still want the USB Cyber Stick they're going to put out that basically has Afterburner controls. I was going to get that and then hook it up to my PC to just play Afterburner. I thought that would be fun. But those you can't just go pre-order those now. So I don't know. I don't know how much dumb money I'll have to pay for a fucking Cyber Stick, but I want to get one of those things. The Mega Drive Mini 2. They're also putting Space Harrier 1 into it, which is kind of cool, even though that did not come out on the Genesis. Yeah, I don't know. There's some neat stuff about that thing that makes me want to order one, and I'm really on the fence about it. But because I never use these things, I bought a bunch of them, and I was like, yeah. But what are you going to do? That's going to do it for the show. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann. You can get access to a bonus content like the Jeff Gerstmann Hall of Fame and like Game Boys to Men, the Patreon exclusive podcast over there, the co-conspirator tier, exclusive to that tier of content, where me and Glenn Rubenstein are kind of going through the early days of our time in the video game business. You know, right now we're talking 91, 92. We're going to talk some more about Sega in the near future and all that sort of stuff. So check all that shit out. Head over to the YouTube channel. I put up like a zillion videos from last week's streams on there up over the weekend, and no one watches YouTube videos over the weekend, so I know none of you have seen them. Midnight Fight Express is there. Arcade Paradise is there. Go check out those games because they are both awesome. Attica is there, with you if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And Project Lazarus, which is a mech-based Vampire Survivors-esque game. I've also been playing a game called Bone Razor Minions, which is another one of those. And maybe at some point this week we'll check that out too. And the right thing to do, I feel, would be to stream some Saints Row, because people do seem to want to see it. I just don't know if I want to do it. I had planned like, oh yeah, like maybe like I'll stream on Wednesday or Thursday and just play a couple hours of Saints Row or something like that. And now I'm just like, man, I don't know about that. I don't know if I want to do that. Anyway, more streams this week. We'll play some video games on the internet. Have yourself a fantastic rest of your week. And perhaps I'll see you later this week, streaming some other stuff. Otherwise, come on back for the Jeff Gerstmann Show next Tuesday morning. Every Tuesday morning, damn it. And enjoy your gaming. And I'll see you next time.
Enjoy your gaming. Enjoy your gaming. I could sell water to a well. Enjoy your gaming.